Second 365 Radio, 365 Sports on your Friday. And we've got David Ubben of The Athletic joining us now. And David's, we'll talk several things college football. But first, David, we've been talking about the transfer portal on the show all week long and how, like there's got to be some way to stem the tide, whether it's, dates or windows that they can do this in and not just kind of willy-nilly whenever they want. I guess willy-nilly is probably a pretty harsh term, but you wrote a column about what your fix would be for it. And before we get into that on the Athletic, but your thoughts on just the amount that we've seen so rapidly, and it just increases every offseason of kids in the transfer portal.
I'm really torn on it because players should have this ability to leave. I'm glad that they can, and in a lot of situations they should, and they're going to be better off by leaving. But I don't know that it's best a lot of the time, and I get a little bit frustrated when people sort of romanticize the "he's stuck around" thing. But I think for me the biggest issue is guys sometimes leave and have to learn the hard way that the grass is not always greener on the other side, and sometimes they get a very devalued degree or no degree, or, there's been guys that go in the transfer portal and sort of end up not coming back out. I think right now we're sitting at about 1,500 guys, FBS players in the portal. I think about 1,100 of those are scholarship players. And, it's early. There's still a lot of movement left, but you only have 30% of those guys who have announced a future destination. And come spring practice, and we'll get to May through the spring semester, and there's going to be more than a few guys that don't have a home and guys that regret that decision. So, like I said, I'm really torn big picture because guys should have the ability to leave, but I've seen so many guys leave and end up in a worse situation for themselves, and that's hard to watch.
Yeah, one of the things I think about the transfer portal is if you're not a patient person, the transfer portal is not going to help you anyway, because you're going to have to go anywhere and be patient or earn your spot. I mean, the only people who have it good are quarterbacks, and there's good things. I mean, for the transfer portal is great for guys who maybe were under recruited and can show something, like Bailey Zappi on the higher level, or guys who just don't fit at the Power 5 level and can, or the FBS level and can drop down to the FCS. But there's just so many different facets of it. Like when you see Caleb Williams, he can go anywhere he wants, save for maybe two schools, and he could probably go there if he really wanted to, but they just don't need him in Ohio State and in Bama. But everywhere else would knock every quarterback out of the room to get him. And I don't think that that's what the transfer portal was intended to be about.
Maybe. I mean, it's tough. Again, for him, they talk a lot about pro potential and Jeff Levy and this sort of Baylor offense, and it looks like Oklahoma is going to be running. Guys have not had the greatest track record of being prepared in the NFL. So I can't necessarily blame him, but it's crazy to me. I wrote about this in the piece. You just look at this on paper. There's so many guys that would kill to be a starting quarterback at Oklahoma. It's a program that's obviously done, that needs no introduction. And he's not going to face a challenge next year. He's the starting quarterback at Oklahoma, and he's saying, no, I want to find a better situation. And he might be able to. Who knows? But it's just crazy to see that. And I kind of touched on this in the piece as well, the impact of NIL money, and that guys are in a situation and somebody tells them, hey, we can hook you up and you can make more money here. Hopefully they're right. Hopefully they can. But I've heard from a lot of coaches, that are a little frustrated with this, that you hear kids being promised stuff and you hope that that's true. And it's really early in the NIL era. We've only been dealing with this for 7 months now, but you're hearing kids being told stuff that's kind of a tall tale, and maybe that ends up being correct. But when guys are making decisions on their future based on promises that may or may not be becoming true, it's just it makes you feel not real comfortable about the future of the sport, I think, which sort of led me to write that column yesterday.
It also would surprise me that of all the places in the world that Oklahoma, like being the quarterback at Oklahoma, couldn't get you NIL money. I mean, it's not like he was the quarterback at Western Kentucky and is going to Oklahoma. He's the quarterback at Oklahoma already. So to me, I don't think his decision, like you said, it's more probably about the future than it is about NIL. Wherever Caleb Williams goes, he's going to get some money.
Yeah, that's no question about that. And like I said, I can't begrudge him for the decision because you look at the history of guys in this offense. They haven't had a lot of success in the NFL level, so I can't necessarily blame him on that front. But at the end of the day, it's still alarming to see that, and hopefully he'll end up in a good situation. He's sort of an interesting case because I think he can end up in a better situation. I totally understand his reasoning for doing so. But the whole thing it's very weird. It's very weird.
Well, look, I know you guys are behind a paywall and don't want to spoil anything, but you have a pretty simple solution, don't you, for, stemming the tide?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think as it stands, I understand all the complaints, but schools have no right to dictate where guys go or when they go because you're not paying them. And they have some freedoms with NIL money. They have freedoms with the transfers, free transfer, which they should have always had. But the way you tie this down is you pay players, you put them on some contracts that lock them down because if you're paying somebody, you do have a say on where they can go. And that's fair. That's not being, exploited or exploitative. So that's the only way that you fix this is taking the next step and paying guys. Now, I write in the piece, there's a lot of hurdles to that. There's a lot of issues to that. There's a lot of difficulties to that. But the economic model for college football has been so broken for so long. I mean, do we need waterfalls and barbershops and recording studios and, $10,000 lockers in facilities? No, you don't need that, especially when your chief labor is unpaid and your coach is making, now we're broaching into 8 digits per year of $10 million coaches. It's wild. Well, the economic model is so hopelessly broken that if you're going to do this and you're going to pay contracts and be able to limit where guys can go, you have to blow up the whole model. And it's long overdue. I'd love to see it because the model is just impossibly broken. So getting there is going to be tough. But if you want to stop this transfer stuff and having basically a fantasy draft every single offseason, which I don't think is good for the sport at all, that's the only road is to take the next step and go to where you should have been a long time ago.
I think the 12-team playoff will slow it down a little bit, but not enough to where people would notice. There might be some guys that stay because now you have a shot at a title that where you wouldn't before, even at Power 5 schools, but. Even then, it's still going to be, there's 1,500 kids in the portal. There might be 1,300 because a couple hundred stay at places that like, oh, well, we're close. I'll stay at Houston because now we're a Big 12 school and we got a shot.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of it. I just think that all this turnover is really not good for college sports, and it's hard for coaches to try and build a program. And, some of the romanticism of kids have got to learn the lesson and they're soft and entitled these days. I don't buy a lot of that. I think it's not necessarily entitlement as much as, guys taking every advantage that they can. I think sometimes you can learn by staying. I think sometimes you can hurt yourself by staying. But again, I don't think it's good for the sport. I think people are going to get tired of this every year when, you got to see, well, how many of my guys on my favorite team are going to leave, and you're going to add a few guys and try to get to know all these guys. I mean, I think one of the things that hurts college basketball, I think college football is sort of pulling with right now, and that people don't know where guys are, where they are, who the good players are, where guys are going to be. And if you got to figure out, hey, I watched Caleb Williams, almost win the Heisman last year. Where is he playing this year? I don't think that's good for the sport. College football has always been at its strongest and its most popular when you have like a Bryce Young coming back, like a Johnny Manziel coming back, a Tim Tebow, these mega stars in the sport that are coming back that have a ton of name recognition. And when everybody's got to figure out the casual fans, because the casual fans are who take the sport to the next level in terms of popularity and in terms of being able to make money and all these things. And if those people don't know who's good or who to watch out for or where people are playing, I think you're going to get a checkout factor that you really don't want.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk Georgia and Alabama on Monday night, David. These are two teams that, pretty much benefit and don't suffer from the transfer portal at all. I mean, I guess you could make the argument that Justin Fields leaving was a dent for Kirby Smart, but outside of that, I mean, he's got a pretty high batting average when it comes to it. But the rematch, this is kind of what everybody was expecting all year long. I don't know if it's what everybody wanted all year long, but it's kind of what we all expected to see was Georgia and Alabama in this position. Your thoughts on this game, and can Georgia scrub the memory of by far their worst performance of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't blame the people who don't want to see this game again because we have already seen it. But these have been the two best teams all season long. They did win their way to get into this position. And I think the rematch is going to be very, very interesting because the first game played against script so much. I said on a podcast, my podcast, Football and Grits, our SEC Athletic, our SEC podcast on the Athletic, I don't know how Alabama's going to move the ball against Georgia. This is them coming off of, they didn't score a touchdown until the last minute against Auburn, who wasn't going to set the world on fire defensively. And sure enough, they put 41 points on the board on what looked like, to that point, the best SEC defense in a decade. We'll see if Georgia lives up to that. If they can shut down Alabama on Monday night, I think they can sort of come close to regaining that crown. But what Alabama was able to do in terms of protecting Bryce Young, getting to the secondary, which is the weakest spot of Georgia's defense, was amazing. So we'll see if Georgia can counter that. So I think the adjustments are going to make for a really legitimately fascinating game on Monday night. I'll be down in San Antonio watching that from ASBA. But the folks who are going to be in Indianapolis watching that ball game, I think are going to get a really compelling contest.
The well-traveled David Ubben of The Athletic with us. We just saw him in New Orleans last week for the Sugar Bowl, now on his way down to the River City in San Antonio for the AFCA convention. David, thank you so much for being with us, and always great. And please subscribe to The Athletic. I know that there's some news with you guys yesterday, and I hope that doesn't change too much for what you guys are doing. I mean, can you guys share anything about that? Or do you know much yet? I know there was a conference call yesterday, and I'm sure it's still new. A little new for you guys.
I mean, it's an exciting day for us. I think it's a validation of a lot of what we have done and what we've tried to build. And for subscribers, not much to change. Our vision still stays the same. Our goal still stays the same. We want to write stories that you can't get anywhere else, and sort of set the conversation for college football. And if you like The Athletic to this point, new ownership shouldn't change anything because the content's going to be the same. And we are going to continue to try and do the same type of work that has earned us so many subscribers to this point. So it's an exciting day, and we are excited to keep it rolling.
Well, Dave, that's great to hear because it's one of the few subscription sites I do pay for because you guys do such a great job, not just in college football, but in everything. It's worth your subscription, and you guys always have great deals anyway. So it's not like no matter what, it's going to be worth it for anybody who signs up. David Ubben, The Athletic, with us here on SicEm 365 Radio, 365 Sports.